Greetings and salutations, young true believers. So today we're talking about Quentin Skinner, third concept of liberty. This article is long, but it's not difficult to understand what Skinner's up to. He's paying an homage to his uh, intellectual touchstone, Isaiah Berlin. And Isaiah Berlin contrasted two conceptions of liberty, one that he called positive, and Skinner defines this, bottom of page 388, top of page 389 of the text. Uh, the positive ideal of freedom is self-perfection, right? What he describes, following much precedent, uh, as the ability to do what one wishes to do without constraint, right? Negative liberty, by contrast, right, means the absence of constraint. And the specific interpretation he believes must be given to the concept of constraint is that it must consist in some act of interference by some external agency with the captivity, or excuse me, with the capacity of another agent to pursue possible choices and activities, right? So with negative liberty, right, you're simply free from constraint from other people, whereas with positive liberty, you're able to do what you will, right? Now, Skinner likes to split hairs and point out that even the weather can serve to undermine my liberty, right? It can be impediment to my liberty, but I think this is a quibble. He even admits it's a quibble, right? It's not something we should worry about. So what's this third concept of liberty then? At the bottom of page 390, Skinner tells us that well. First off, let me give you some background here. He notes that this third concept of liberty is actually goes back to at least the 13th century, like 1260, right? And it was invoked by English political theorists in 1642 in the lead up to the English Civil War. Now, you don't know, the English Civil War was a war between the parliamentarians and the king, King Charles specifically, over who should have final authority with respect to the government, right? And the parliamentarians complained, look, the king has the ability to undermine our liberty in considerable ways, right? So much so that we really can't be said to be free if the king has certain of these powers. So Skinner points out, right, the theory in question, that is to say, the third concept of liberty, formed part of the armory of the parliamentarians in their disputes with the king in the opening decades of the 17th century. Critics of the royal prerogative began to argue that, to the extent that they were obliged to live in dependence on the power of the king, and obliged in consequence to rely on the king's goodwill for the continuation of their rights and liberties, they were living in a sense of servitude. The parliamentarians insisted, in other words, that freedom is restricted not only by actual interference or the threat of it, but also by the mere knowledge, right, that we are living in dependence on the goodwill of others. These writers are not making the obvious point that the possibility of such arbitrary interference renders our liberty less robust or secure. They are arguing that a mere awareness of living under an arbitrary power, a power capable of interfering in our activities without having to consider our interests, serves in itself to limit our liberty. Knowing that we are free to do or forbear only because someone else has chosen not to stop us is what reduces us to servitude, right? So again, to sum up, right, this third concept of liberty is a concept in which we are not even under the dominion of the possibility of a threat to undermine our liberty. And that's what the parliamentarians were complaining about, right? The king possesses an arbitrary power to undermine our liberty whenever he sees fit, and that's not liberty itself, right? So this third concept is we don't even live under that vague threat, right? The king is constrained legally to not be able to do certain things or even hold that threat over our heads,